Her voice shook, asking for work. The cowboy said, "I don't need a servant, I need a wife." A cold morning wind moved through the quiet western town as the first light of day spread across dusty streets. Most shops were still closed, and only a few early workers walked around with coffee cups in their hands. A small bus stopped near the town square, its engine humming softly before going silent. From it stepped a young woman carrying one small bag. She paused for a moment, looking around as if trying to understand where she had arrived. Her clothes were simple, and her face showed signs of long travel and little rest. She took a deep breath, as though preparing herself for something difficult. She had come to this town because she had nowhere else left to go. The last place she lived held too many painful memories, and staying there would have meant giving up hope completely. She chose to leave instead, even though she had no clear plan. The only thing she knew was that she needed work, any honest work that could help her start again. Still, the fear inside her made every step feel heavy. She walked slowly along the main street, watching people open their shops. A bakery released warm smells into the air, and for a moment she stood outside, thinking about going in. But she hesitated. Talking to strangers felt harder than walking across miles of empty road. Finally, she gathered courage and stepped inside. The woman behind the counter greeted her kindly, and after a brief pause, she asked if there was any work available. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke, revealing nervousness she could not hide. The answer was polite but firm. They were not hiring. She nodded and thanked them anyway, trying to keep her disappointment hidden. She left the bakery and continued down the street, asking at a small store, then a diner, then another shop. Each time the result was the same. People were not unkind, but they were cautious. Small towns did not easily trust strangers. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. She sat on a bench near the edge of town, holding her bag tightly as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. Doubt crept into her thoughts. Maybe she had made a mistake coming here. Maybe she should have stayed where she was, even if it meant accepting a life she did not want. She closed her eyes briefly, pushing away tears before they could fall. An older man sitting nearby noticed her but did not ask questions. After a while, he mentioned casually that the ranch outside town sometimes needed help. He described the owner as quiet but fair, someone who preferred hard work over unnecessary talk. She listened carefully, feeling a small spark of hope. Ranch work would be difficult, but she was not afraid of effort. She thanked him softly and stood up again, ready to try one more time. The road to the ranch stretched across open land. The sky felt endless above her, and the silence around her was both peaceful and lonely. She walked for nearly an hour before seeing wooden fences and a wide field where horses moved slowly under the sun. A house stood near a barn, simple but strong, showing years of care. She stopped at the gate, unsure if she should continue. Fear whispered that she might be turned away again. After a long moment, she opened the gate and walked forward. The cowboy was working near the barn when he noticed her approaching. He stood tall, his posture calm but watchful. He was known in town as someone who spoke little but meant every word he said. Years of living alone had made him comfortable with silence. When he saw the stranger, he wiped his hands on a cloth and waited quietly for her to speak first. She stopped a few steps away, gripping her bag. For a moment, no words came out. Then she forced herself to speak. Her voice trembled as she asked if he needed help on the ranch. She explained that she could clean, cook, or do any task he needed. She avoided sharing too much about herself, focusing only on her willingness to work hard. The cowboy listened without interrupting. He noticed how tired she looked, but also how determined she seemed. Many people came asking for easy work, but there was something different about her. She did not make excuses or promises she could not keep. She simply asked for a chance. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he asked a few simple questions about her experience and how long she planned to stay in town. She answered honestly, admitting she did not know what the future held. The honesty surprised him. Most people tried to sound confident even when they were unsure, but she chose truth over appearance. Silence stretched between them. The wind moved through the grass, and a horse nearby lifted its head as if curious about the conversation. Finally, he told her he did not need a servant. The words made her heart sink, and she prepared to thank him and leave. But before she could turn away, he added that he might need someone willing to help temporarily. He made no promises beyond that. Relief crossed her face, though she tried to hide it. He showed her a small room near the back of the house where she could stay if she agreed to follow his rules. The arrangement was simple, honest work in exchange for a place to sleep and meals. She agreed immediately, grateful for any opportunity. The first hours felt awkward. She moved carefully, unsure where things belonged or how much space she was allowed to take. He showed her basic tasks without unnecessary explanation, trusting her to learn quickly. She worked silently, focusing on each job with full attention. As the day passed, he noticed how she never complained even when tasks were difficult. She treated the animals gently, speaking to them in a soft voice that seemed to calm them. The ranch had felt empty for a long time, but her presence brought a subtle change, like the beginning of something new. That evening, they sat at opposite sides of the table during dinner. Conversation was minimal but not uncomfortable. The quiet felt different from loneliness. It felt shared. She thanked him for giving her a chance, her voice still carrying traces of nervousness. He nodded, saying that actions mattered more than words. Outside, the sky turned orange as the sun set behind distant hills. She stepped onto the porch, watching the colors change, feeling something she had not felt in a long time, a small sense of safety. The journey that brought her here had been difficult, but for the first time since leaving her old life, she felt she might be able to breathe again. Inside the house, the cowboy watched through the window briefly before turning away. He was not used to company, and part of him wondered if allowing her to stay was a mistake. Yet another part of him recognized the courage it took for someone to arrive with nothing and still ask for a chance. Night settled over the ranch, bringing quiet stars and cool air. As she lay in the small room, she stared at the ceiling, thinking about the day. She had arrived with fear and uncertainty, but now she had a place to rest, at least for a while. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, hope felt possible. Morning arrived quietly over the ranch, bringing soft light through the window of the small room where she slept. For a moment she forgot where she was, but then the smell of fresh air and the distant sound of horses reminded her. She sat up slowly, feeling both nervous and hopeful. This was her first full day working there, and she wanted to prove she deserved the chance she had been given. She dressed quickly and stepped outside. The sky was clear and the land stretched wide in every direction. The cowboy was already awake, feeding the animals without speaking much. She greeted him softly, unsure how friendly she should be. He nodded in return, showing quiet acceptance rather than warm excitement. Still, that small gesture gave her confidence. He explained the morning tasks in simple words. There were stalls to clean, water buckets to fill, and supplies to organize. She listened carefully, repeating instructions to make sure she understood. He watched her closely at first, expecting questions or hesitation, but she moved with steady focus. Even when she struggled with heavier work, she did not complain. As the hours passed, she found a rhythm. Working with her hands helped calm her thoughts. Each completed task felt like a step toward belonging. She spoke gently to the animals, and they seemed to respond to her calm presence. The cowboy noticed this from a distance. He had always believed animals could sense honesty, and the way they reacted to her made him reconsider his first impression. By midday, the sun warmed the fields and they paused for lunch. They sat under the shade of a tree, eating simple food in silence. She felt the quiet stretching between them but did not see it as uncomfortable. Instead, it felt peaceful. After a while, he asked where she learned to work so hard. She hesitated before answering, choosing words carefully. She said life had taught her that effort was often the only thing people could control. He nodded, understanding more than she realized. He did not push for more details, and she appreciated that. Trust, she believed, grew slowly. The less he pressured her, the more she felt safe. Days began to follow a similar pattern. She woke early, worked steadily, and slowly learned how the ranch operated. The cowboy showed her how to handle tools properly, how to recognize signs of tired animals, and how to plan tasks so nothing was wasted. He spoke little but always with purpose. She started to understand that his quiet nature was not coldness but caution shaped by past experiences. In the evenings, they shared meals together. At first, conversations remained simple, weather, work, small observations about the day. Over time, however, she began to share small stories from her past. She avoided painful details, focusing instead on lessons she had learned. He listened without judgment, offering short but thoughtful responses. The town began to notice her presence at the ranch. Some people greeted her kindly when she visited the local store for supplies. Others watched with curiosity, whispering questions about why a stranger had suddenly appeared in a place known for its quiet routine. She sensed the attention, but tried not to let it affect her. One afternoon, while working near the fence, she accidentally injured her hand slightly. It was not serious, but she reacted as if it were, pulling back quickly and apologizing repeatedly. The cowboy stepped forward calmly, helping her clean the small cut and wrapping it carefully. His actions were gentle but firm, showing care without making a big scene. She felt embarrassed by her reaction but also grateful for his patience. That moment changed something between them. She realized he was not just offering work, he was offering respect. He never treated her like someone weak or fragile. Instead, he trusted her to handle responsibility while also stepping in when needed. As the days turned into weeks, laughter slowly entered their conversations. She began to feel more comfortable expressing herself, and he found himself speaking more than usual. The ranch, once filled only with silence, now carried small moments of shared humor. One evening, after finishing dinner, she admitted that she had been prepared to leave earlier because she thought she was a burden. She explained that in the past, people often made her feel unwanted once they learned more about her struggles. Saying the words aloud made her voice shake again, just like the day she first arrived. The cowboy listened carefully. After a long pause, he said simply that everyone carried something difficult, and leaving too quickly sometimes prevented people from discovering what could grow if they stayed. His words were not dramatic, but they held deep meaning. She felt warmth in her chest, realizing he was encouraging her without forcing anything. Despite the growing comfort, challenges remained. Ranch work was physically demanding, and there were moments when she doubted her strength. During one particularly difficult day, when storms threatened the area, they worked together to secure equipment and guide animals to safety. The shared effort created a strong sense of teamwork. When the storm passed, they stood side by side watching the sky clear, both exhausted but satisfied. During that quiet moment, she noticed how different her life felt compared to before. She was no longer just surviving, she was participating in something meaningful. The ranch was slowly becoming more than a temporary shelter. The cowboy also experienced change. He found himself looking forward to conversations and noticing small details about her mood. He respected her independence but appreciated her presence more than he expected. The loneliness that had defined his days began to fade, replaced by quiet companionship. One night, while washing dishes together, she thanked him again for allowing her to stay. He replied that she had earned her place through effort, not charity. Hearing that made her smile in a way that felt genuine and free from fear. However, uncertainty still lingered. She did not know how long she could remain or what the future would hold. The idea of leaving frightened her, yet she avoided asking about long-term plans. She did not want to risk losing what she had gained by expecting too much. The turning point came when she packed her bag quietly one evening. She believed it was time to move on before she became too attached. When the cowboy noticed her standing near the door, ready to leave, he asked why. She explained that she did not want to overstay her welcome or cause trouble with town gossip. He responded calmly but firmly, saying that decisions about the ranch were his to make. He told her she had not caused trouble. Instead, she had brought positive change. The sincerity in his voice surprised her. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe she might truly belong somewhere. She unpacked her bag slowly, feeling both relieved and emotional. That moment marked a shift from temporary arrangement to something deeper, though neither of them fully understood what it would become. As night settled again over the ranch, she stood outside looking at the stars. The wind felt softer now, no longer carrying fear but possibility. Behind her, the house lights glowed warmly, and inside was a man who had offered her more than work. He had offered space to rebuild herself. The journey was still uncertain, but with each passing day, the bond between them grew stronger, built not on grand gestures but on shared effort, quiet respect, and the slow return of trust that neither had expected to find again. The days continued to pass with a steady rhythm, and life on the ranch began to feel natural for her. The early mornings no longer felt heavy or unfamiliar. Instead, she woke with purpose, knowing what needed to be done and where she belonged. The quiet land around her, once strange and distant, now felt comforting. She moved confidently through the daily routines, her steps no longer hesitant. The cowboy noticed the change in her. She walked taller, spoke more clearly, and even smiled more often. The nervous tremble in her voice had faded, replaced by calm strength. He respected the way she worked without expecting praise, and he trusted her with more responsibilities. She helped plan tasks, managed supplies, and learned how to handle challenges without waiting for instructions. One afternoon, while repairing a fence together, they found themselves talking more openly than usual. The conversation started simply, about weather patterns and animals, but slowly moved into deeper territory. She asked him why he had chosen to live alone for so long. He paused, considering his answer carefully. Finally, he shared that he once had a life filled with close connections, but loss had changed him. Rather than risk feeling that pain again, he chose solitude. She listened quietly, understanding more than she said aloud. She knew what it felt like to carry invisible scars. Instead of offering advice or sympathy, she simply acknowledged his honesty. That moment built trust between them, not through dramatic words, but through shared understanding. Life felt peaceful until one morning when she visited the town to buy supplies. As she walked through the street, she noticed someone watching her from across the road. At first, she ignored it, thinking she imagined it, but the feeling stayed with her. The person seemed familiar, though she could not immediately place where she had seen them before. The encounter unsettled her, and she returned to the ranch feeling distracted. The cowboy noticed the change immediately. She worked more quietly than usual, avoiding eye contact and speaking only when necessary. He did not push her to explain, but remained observant. Later that evening, he gently asked if something had happened in town. She hesitated, unsure whether to share her concerns. The fear of being judged or misunderstood returned briefly, making her want to keep everything inside. But the trust they had built encouraged her to speak honestly. She explained that someone from her past might have arrived in the area, though she was not certain. Her past was not filled with dramatic events, but it held memories she wished to leave behind, people who doubted her, moments where she felt small and powerless. Seeing someone connected to that time made her worry that the peace she found on the ranch might disappear. The cowboy listened without interruption. Instead of asking many questions, he told her that everyone deserved the chance to start again. His calm reassurance helped ease her anxiety, but uncertainty still lingered. Over the next few days, she struggled with her thoughts. She worked harder than ever, almost as if trying to prove she deserved to stay. The cowboy noticed her pushing herself too far and reminded her that rest was also important. His concern made her realize how much he cared, even though he rarely expressed emotions directly. One afternoon, while feeding the horses, she finally shared more of her story. She explained that she had spent years trying to meet expectations that never felt right for her. She described how she often felt invisible, how her efforts were overlooked, and how leaving her old life was both terrifying and necessary. Speaking the truth felt freeing, though her voice trembled slightly as old emotions resurfaced. The cowboy responded with quiet understanding. He did not offer grand speeches or solutions. Instead, he said that strength often came from choosing to move forward even when the path was unclear. His words carried weight because they came from lived experience rather than empty encouragement. Their bond deepened after that conversation. They began sharing more about their hopes and fears, discovering similarities they had not expected. Both had experienced loneliness, though in different ways. Both understood what it meant to rebuild after loss. Despite the growing connection, tension remained beneath the surface. She worried that her presence might complicate his life. She questioned whether she truly belonged or if she was only passing through. These thoughts made her more cautious, even as her feelings for him grew stronger. A turning point came during a long ride across the fields to check distant fences. The open land gave them space to speak freely. As they rode side by side, she asked why he had chosen to let her stay when he first met her. He admitted that he saw determination in her eyes, something that reminded him of a younger version of himself. He said he believed people deserved chances when they were willing to work for them. Hearing this made her emotional, though she tried to hide it. She realized that his decision had changed her life more than he probably understood. Without that opportunity, she might still be wandering without direction. Later that day, they faced an unexpected challenge when one of the animals became injured. Working together to help the animals strengthened their sense of partnership. She followed his instructions calmly, trusting his experience, and he trusted her steady presence. The moment showed how far they had come from strangers to a team that supported each other naturally. As evening approached, they sat outside watching the sunset. The sky turned soft shades of orange and pink, reflecting the quiet peace they had created together. She admitted that she was still afraid of losing what she had found. He replied that fear was natural when something mattered. That conversation stayed with her long after they returned inside. She realized that her feelings were changing. What began as gratitude for a place to stay had grown into something deeper: respect, trust, and perhaps even love. Yet she hesitated to acknowledge it fully, unsure whether he felt the same. The days that followed were filled with small moments that carried meaning. Shared laughter over simple mistakes, silent understanding during difficult tasks, and comfortable quiet during evening meals. The ranch felt alive again, and both of them sensed that their connection was shaping the future in ways they could not predict. However, the shadow of her past remained. One evening, she saw the same familiar figure near the edge of town again while delivering supplies. This time she felt certain it was someone connected to her old life. Fear returned briefly, making her question whether staying was fair to him. When she returned to the ranch, she considered leaving without explanation, believing it might protect him from any trouble tied to her history. But before she could act, he noticed her troubled expression and asked what she was thinking. Instead of hiding the truth, she told him everything: her worries, her doubts, and her fear that she might disrupt the peace he had built. His response surprised her. He said that decisions about his life belonged to him, and he chose to face challenges rather than avoid them. That moment became a turning point for both of them. She realized she no longer needed to run from her past alone. He realized he was willing to open his life again, despite the risks. As night settled over the ranch, the air felt different, filled with unspoken understanding and growing closeness. They stood side by side under the stars, not needing many words to recognize that their lives were becoming deeply connected. The journey was far from finished, and new challenges awaited them, but something important had shifted. They were no longer two separate people simply sharing space. They were becoming partners in facing whatever came next, guided by trust, resilience, and the quiet strength that had brought them together in the first place. The following weeks brought a quiet but powerful change to life on the ranch. The bond between them grew stronger, though neither of them rushed to define it with words. Their connection showed itself through small actions: shared glances when something made them laugh, silent understanding during difficult work, and a growing comfort that felt natural rather than forced. The woman moved through her daily tasks with confidence. She no longer felt like a guest waiting for permission to stay. Instead, she worked as if the ranch was partly hers too, caring deeply about its future. She planned improvements, suggested small changes, and showed a strong sense of responsibility. The cowboy noticed how she had transformed from someone uncertain into someone steady and reliable. Despite the peace between them, outside pressure slowly began to grow. Town gossip became louder. Some people wondered why a woman with an unclear past had suddenly become part of the ranch owner's life. Others questioned whether she was truly trustworthy. Though no one confronted her directly, she could feel the weight of judgment in subtle looks and whispered conversations. One afternoon, while visiting the store for supplies, she overheard a conversation that made her pause. Two townspeople spoke quietly, but not quietly enough. They speculated about her intentions and suggested she might leave once she got what she wanted. The words were not loud, but they carried enough doubt to reopen old wounds. She returned to the ranch feeling unsettled. For a moment, she considered ignoring the comments, but the memories of past rejection made it hard to forget. She wondered if the cowboy had heard similar things and whether he secretly believed them. That evening, she worked longer than usual, focusing on physical tasks to escape her thoughts. The cowboy noticed her pushing herself too hard. When he asked what was wrong, she initially brushed off his concern, saying she was just tired. But he knew her well enough by now to sense something deeper. After dinner, as they sat quietly on the porch watching the sunset, she finally spoke. She told him about the gossip and admitted that it brought back fears she thought she had left behind. Her voice was calm but carried vulnerability. She explained that she never wanted to cause trouble for him or damage his reputation. He listened carefully before answering. His response was simple but firm. He said that people often formed opinions without knowing the full story, and he refused to let outside voices decide who deserved kindness or trust. He reminded her that what mattered was how they treated each other and how they lived their lives honestly. His words comforted her, but doubt still lingered. She had spent years believing she needed to leave before becoming unwanted. That habit was difficult to break. Soon after, the ranch faced a new challenge. Unexpected repairs were needed after strong winds damaged part of the barn. The work required long hours and careful planning. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, they approached the situation as a team. She organized supplies while he handled structural repairs. Working together strengthened their partnership and gave them both a sense of shared purpose. During one long evening of repairs, they paused to rest. Sitting side by side, covered in dust and tired from effort, they laughed at how messy they looked. The moment felt light and genuine. Without thinking, she reached out and brushed dirt from his sleeve. The small gesture carried meaning neither of them fully understood yet, but it deepened the warmth between them. Over the next few days, she noticed how he watched her differently, not just with appreciation for her work, but with quiet affection. She felt it too, but hesitated to acknowledge it openly. Both of them had experienced loss and disappointment before, making them cautious about moving too quickly. One morning, while preparing breakfast, she reflected on how much her life had changed. When she first arrived, she had only wanted survival. Now she wanted something more: stability, belonging, and perhaps even love. The realization frightened her because it meant she had something to lose again. The turning point came during a calm evening after a long day's work. They sat outside under a sky filled with stars. The air felt peaceful, and neither felt rushed to speak. Finally, she broke the silence, admitting that she had almost left several times because she feared becoming too attached. The cowboy listened quietly before responding. He admitted that he had once chosen isolation because it felt safer than risking emotional pain. But her presence had changed his perspective. He realized that avoiding connection also meant avoiding joy. His words were honest and carried deep emotion, though he spoke them gently. She felt tears forming but did not look away. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that someone valued her not for what she could provide, but for who she was. The conversation shifted their relationship from unspoken feelings to clear understanding. However, challenges did not disappear overnight. Financial stress began to affect the ranch when supply costs increased unexpectedly. They needed to make difficult decisions about expenses and future plans. Instead of pulling them apart, the pressure brought them closer. They discussed options openly, respecting each other's ideas and working toward solutions together. One afternoon, while reviewing accounts at the kitchen table, she suggested new ways to improve income through small changes in how they managed resources. He listened seriously, appreciating her practical thinking. The collaboration strengthened their sense of partnership, showing that their connection extended beyond emotion into shared responsibility. Despite progress, she still struggled with lingering fear. She worried that happiness might disappear as quickly as it arrived. One evening, she packed her bag again quietly, unsure if she deserved to stay long-term. Before she could leave, he noticed and asked her to talk honestly. Her voice shook slightly as she admitted that she feared being replaced or becoming unwanted once life returned to normal. He responded by saying that nothing about her presence felt temporary to him anymore. He explained that the ranch felt like home again because of her, not despite her. That moment changed everything. The fear that had followed her for years began to fade. She realized she no longer needed to run from connection. Instead, she could choose to stay and build something meaningful. From that day forward, their interactions carried new warmth. They worked side by side with deeper understanding, sharing laughter more freely and speaking openly about future plans. The ranch no longer felt like a place of quiet survival, but a place of growing hope. As another sunset painted the sky, they stood together near the fence, watching the horses move calmly across the field. The world felt peaceful, yet filled with possibility. Their journey was not finished, and challenges still awaited them, but they had reached a point where trust guided their choices instead of fear. The woman who once arrived with a trembling voice had grown into someone strong and confident. The cowboy who once lived in silence had learned to open his heart again. Together, they faced the future not as strangers sharing space, but as partners ready to shape a new chapter of life side by side. The days that followed felt different from anything either of them had known before. The ranch no longer carried the quiet loneliness that once filled every corner. Instead, it felt alive with shared purpose and gentle warmth. Morning sunlight came through the windows as she prepared breakfast, moving confidently through the kitchen as if she had always belonged there. The cowboy stepped inside after finishing early chores, and for a moment they simply looked at each other, sharing a small smile that said more than words. Life settled into a rhythm that felt steady and real. They worked side by side without needing constant instructions. She understood the animals and land more deeply now, noticing small changes in weather patterns and planning tasks before they became urgent. He trusted her judgment and often asked for her opinion before making decisions. Their partnership grew naturally, built on respect rather than obligation. Even the ranch itself seemed to respond to their teamwork. Repairs were completed, fields were better maintained, and the animals appeared calmer. The work felt meaningful because they shared responsibility. When challenges appeared, they faced them together instead of alone. One afternoon, they rode into town to deliver supplies. The same streets that once felt intimidating now seemed welcoming. Some townspeople greeted her warmly, noticing how comfortable she looked beside him. Though a few curious glances remained, she no longer felt shaken by them. She realized that her sense of belonging came from within, not from outside approval. At the local store, an older woman complimented her for bringing positive change to the ranch. The words surprised her. For a moment she remembered the day she arrived, unsure of everything and afraid to speak. The contrast between then and now made her feel grateful for how far she had come. On the ride back, the cowboy asked if she missed anything from her old life. She thought carefully before answering. She admitted that memories still existed, but they no longer held power over her choices. She had learned that leaving behind what hurt her did not mean forgetting lessons learned along the way. Instead, it allowed her to grow into someone stronger. As evening approached, they worked together to prepare for an upcoming season change. The tasks required careful planning, and she took the lead on organizing supplies. He watched with quiet admiration, recognizing how much confidence she had gained. The transformation felt remarkable, yet completely natural. Later that night, they sat on the porch watching the stars. Silence stretched between them, but it felt peaceful rather than empty. She spoke softly, saying she never imagined she would feel safe enough to dream about the future again. He listened, understanding how much courage it took for her to say those words. He admitted that before she arrived, he believed his life would remain unchanged, defined by routine and distance from others. Her presence had reminded him that connection could exist without fear. Instead of feeling vulnerable, he felt stronger sharing life with someone who understood him. Their conversation grew deeper as they spoke about hopes for the ranch and ideas for improving it together. They discussed expanding certain areas, creating new opportunities, and building something that would last beyond the present moment. The discussion felt less like planning and more like imagining a shared future. A few days later, a strong storm approached the area. They prepared carefully, securing equipment and guiding animals to shelter. The storm tested their teamwork but also highlighted how well they worked together. During the heavy rain, they stayed inside, sharing stories and laughter to pass the time. The storm outside felt less threatening because they faced it together. When the sky cleared the next morning, they walked through the fields to check for damage. The land looked fresh and renewed, washed clean by rain. She paused to take in the view, realizing that her own life felt similar, shaped by past storms but stronger because of them. As time passed, their connection became more open and natural. They no longer avoided acknowledging their feelings. Small gestures, a reassuring touch on the shoulder, shared laughter over simple moments, expressed what words sometimes could not. One evening, while preparing dinner, she stopped and looked at him with seriousness. She told him that when she first arrived, she only wanted work because she believed she had nothing else to offer. Now she understood that she had more to give than she ever realized: loyalty, strength, and the ability to build a life alongside someone who respected her. He listened carefully before responding. He said that when he told her he did not need a servant but needed a wife, he had not fully understood what that meant. At the time, he only knew he wanted companionship built on honesty. Now he realized that what they had created together was stronger than anything he had imagined. Her eyes filled with emotion, not from sadness, but from the deep relief of finally feeling seen and valued. The journey from uncertainty to belonging had been long, filled with doubts and challenges, but every step had led to this moment. Their relationship continued to grow through daily life rather than dramatic events. They faced small disagreements with patience, learning to listen rather than react quickly. They celebrated simple victories, like successful harvests or peaceful evenings without worry. The town gradually accepted their partnership as natural. People who once doubted began to see the positive changes at the ranch and the happiness reflected in both of them. She no longer felt like an outsider trying to prove her worth. Instead, she walked through town with quiet confidence, knowing she had earned respect through authenticity. One afternoon, while standing near the fence where they first spoke openly about their fears, she reflected on how much had changed. The woman who arrived with a trembling voice now spoke with strength and clarity. The cowboy who once avoided connection now welcomed shared moments without hesitation. As the sun began to set, they stood together watching the sky change colors. The scene felt familiar yet entirely new. He reached for her hand, and she held it without hesitation. Neither needed grand promises because their actions had already shown commitment. She realized that true belonging did not come from being rescued, but from building something meaningful alongside someone who chose to stay. He realized that opening his heart had not weakened him, but allowed him to live more fully. The story closed with a quiet but powerful moment. The same ranch that once felt empty now held laughter, plans, and shared dreams. She no longer arrived asking for work. She stood beside him as an equal partner, shaping the future together.